This is Dale Jr., and you're listening to Dirty Mo Radio.
Welcome to this special edition of Fastlane Family with Kelley Earnhardt Miller.
Welcome to Fastlane Family. My dad would have celebrated his 63rd birthday this week, so I felt it was only fitting to have my grandmother Martha and my dad's sister Kathy Earnhardt Watkins in studio today to share some stories about my dad growing up. Are you ready to tell some stories, Martha?
Yeah, I'll try.
Does it make you mad if I call you Martha?
No.
My mom says it makes her mad when I call her Brenda.
Oh, does it?
You're at work. All right, Mamaw. So Dad was the middle child of your 5 children.
He was my first boy.
Yep, first boy. So that's my question. See, you're already reading my mind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So what was your reaction and Papa Ralph's reaction when you found out that you were having your first boy? Because Aunt Kathy's the oldest and then Aunt Kay, the two sisters.
Kay's the oldest.
Oh, Kay's the oldest. Oops,
yeah.
Sorry. Aunt Kay's the oldest.
Let's get that right.
Aunt Kay's the oldest.
Yeah, she's 14 months older.
Okay. So what was your reaction when you found out you're having a boy? Because boys to dads are a big deal.
Well, I don't think back there we really knew what we were going to have till they got.
Oh, the technology,
till they got
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
1951 was.
So I didn't know
no technology.
What I was going to have till I went to the hospital.
So you just knew right when he was born that he was a boy. So what was the reaction?
Well, I was glad to get a boy finally. I already had 2 girls, so I was glad to get a boy.
What did Papa Ralph say?
I think he was excited too because he finally got a boy.
I always enjoyed the story she tells about going in labor because Dale being born in April, he was the only child that was born during race season.
Okay.
And so Mom, share that story.
Yeah, he drove, there was a garage down on 29 where his car stayed that he drove for, Berlin Edelman, and he said, well, just let me go get my car and I'll come back by and check on you. And I said, no, I don't think you need to go get your car. I think you better just stay here. And sure enough, Dale was born that day. He was the only one that kept him away from a race.
Yeah, and so he actually did miss the race.
And he's the one that drove race cars.
Yeah. That's interesting that he stayed back because, see, my mom was telling me stories about the day that I was coming home from the hospital. You actually came with Mom to take me home from the hospital because Dad was racing.
Yeah.
So that's funny. What kind of baby and or toddler was Dad? How would you describe him?
Well, I'll just tell you, from the day he could ride a bicycle, tricycle, whatever, he wanted to be in front. No matter what he was doing, he wanted to be in front. That was just the way he was. And he, of course, being the first boy, he probably tried to tell the girls what to do too, but.
Do you remember, Kathy, as a toddler, were you guys interested in the racing as girls, and then the difference between Dad coming along versus you 2 girls prior to that?
I've ever since we planned to be on the show, I've tried to think back about my very first memory of when Dale was my brother.
Yeah.
Because Kay was first, and she was the special little girl that they wanted first. Well, then they wanted a boy and got me. And so
and she should have been a boy.
I always felt like the boy, the tomboy in my mind. And then Dale came along, so I was always really jealous of Dale and wanted to get to do the things Dale got to do, go out in the yard and play. And when even as we were growing up as really young. But one of my first memories is we had a lady that helped mother. Her name was Annie. A wonderful lady that was just like a second mother to us. And Dale and I both were real attached to her. And I just remember her hauling Dale around. And I just vaguely even remember that. But I don't remember him as a bad kid. I mean, whiny or...
Well, he was.
He was a mama's boy, though.
He was my first boy.
He was a mama's boy.
So how did you, being that it's Dad's birthday week, when he was a little boy, how did you guys celebrate birthdays in general in your family?
Usually just a cake and maybe have a few kids over, for a party or a little party or something.
What I remember of birthdays, because 4 of us were born from October, November, and December, I remember one really big birthday party for all of us. And so I don't really remember a birthday party in April for Dale. I don't really remember a special, now Kay and Danny may remember, but the only thing I remember, but like Mama said, our neighborhood was full of kids, and we may have 30 kids up at the house for a birthday party, but we never really knew whose birthday party it was. It was all of our birthday parties.
Well, and I didn't send out invitations or anything. They just kind of knew, and
Just the kind of the neighborhood.
It was a neighborhood.
Yeah.
We
well,
were
the
very
neighborhood
close.
we lived in, where I live now, I used to let them go play all down the street and everywhere, but now I
We wouldn't
would
dream of that now,
no,
would we?
mm-mm.
So, not a lot of memories about birthday celebrations, but what about family traditions? For us now, coming to your house Thanksgiving and Christmas is our family tradition in the Earnhardt household. What did you guys do then when you had little kids running around?
Well, just basically the same thing. It was basically with Ralph's aunt, Aunt Annabelle, their aunt, Ralph's sister, and Grandma Earnhardt and all just kind of got together. We didn't really have a lot of parties for a bunch of kids.
And you had the grandparents were in Bryson City.
Well,
North
actually,
Carolina. Was that sort of?
Grandma moved there after, Grandpa died, and she remarried and moved to Bryson City.
I know. I love that story you tell about one of her husbands getting killed by the wagon.
That,
it's not a. I don't
that
love
was her
that.
First
Yeah,
husband.
I don't love that story for the meaning of it, but I just think it's just so funny to hear a story about somebody getting killed by a wagon.
He got run over by a wagon. Is how he died.
Mr. Fur, Annabelle and Dee.
That was Annabelle and Dewitt's
No,
dad.
Annabelle
Right.
Clifford.
Cliff's
yeah,
daddy.
daddy.
Right. All right. So we'll.
I'll just something about Christmas. I just remember we would always go out in the woods and cut down a cedar tree. We never had like spruce or pine, but we'd just go down in the woods right there in the neighborhood and cut down a cedar tree, and that's what we decorated. And we got to go through a Sears catalog and point out what we wanted. I remember that as a little child. And of course, one of the most memorable Christmas presents I remember that Dale asked for and got was one of the motors, and I don't even know where they got it, but it was like a model car, except it was a real motor that once it was put together, it would actually run.
And he put it together.
And he put it together, from start to finish by himself. And, we were all so proud and excited for him. Now, he was preteen. He wasn't a little boy, but he was preteen. But it was still quite an accomplishment for him to be able to put the pieces of that motor together. And, we were just really, really bragging on him. And Daddy come in and said, well, boy, can't you see right here? And, of course, he did something.
He showed him something that he didn't do right.
But the motor ran, so...
As parents, we all do that from time to time. We point out, hey, you could have done this better instead of giving the praise first. From stories that I've heard about Papa Ralph,
But
he was
I was
like
going to
that.
tell you that Kathy should have been our first boy because she'd rather be out in the garage with her dad or outside rather than being in the house doing anything.
But another thing about holidays, Daddy raced all year, so we never really did a lot as a family and weren't together a lot.
He didn't race during winter.
Because he was racing all year. During holidays was our time with Daddy that he wasn't gone. And so he would go deer hunting and things. So bringing game in, whether it be rabbits or deer or whatever, making stews. And he was more interactive with us as a family. And so that was our tradition. That was the special part of the holidays because he was gone the rest of the year, sometimes 6-7 days a week.
Yeah, because back then they raced pretty much the whole week. Sometimes they could race 3 to 5 times in a given 7-day week.
And so that's where Dale got his love for hunting because that was the time he really got to spend with Daddy hunting and getting out and learning something other than racing because it wasn't they didn't mess with the race cars.
Right. Okay, so Kathy, obviously I've made a name for myself as Dale's big sister. You were a big sister. What was it like being the big sister to Dad and Danny and Randy?
It wasn't the same in context as you're being a big sister for Dale Jr. because obviously there were 5 of us. We were all really close-knit. Dale and I were probably closest because I, like I said before, was a tomboy and wanted to be more in his world than in a girl's world. And so I don't ever remember really feeling like a big sister. I felt more like a brother. Kay was the big sister. Kay's the one that tried to tell us what to do because she was left in charge a lot. And,
She was kind of the mother hen.
And I was usually one of the ones that was right there getting in trouble with the boys, kind of, sort of,
Gotcha.
and competing for the bicycles and competing for playing out in the yard and wanting to be in the shop, and was devastated the day my daddy told me I couldn't come back in the shop because I was starting to get too old and there's too much talk going on that he didn't think I needed to hear, but the boys could be out there and hear it. So
I remember that well. That was the same thing for me.
I was very jealous of Dale's world, especially back then.
Yeah. Everybody thinks, I think, there's 4 of us, Carrie, Dale, myself, and Taylor, but we didn't, like you got, all 5 of you grew up with your parents, grew up in the same household until you were off marrying, and it's so different for us with Carrie living with his mom, and we didn't really meet him till he was 16, so it was Dale and I that grew up from babies to, going off in the world. And then Taylor came along when I was 16. I went off to college when I was 17 and a half. So really just lived with her in the house for a year and a half. So it's very different than what you described as having 5 siblings. And Mama, you're one of 12. So
yeah, right. And I was the youngest girl. Mom and Dad had 7 girls. Finally had a boy. Then I came along, and I bet my dad said, "Oh no, not another girl." But Kathy used to tell Dale that she was supposed to be the first boy, and he got her ride.
So when Dad decided that he wanted to quit school and race, he was in the 8th grade. How did you handle that? I can't imagine my girls coming to me.
In the 9th, I think.
9th grade? Yeah. So Carson's in the 8th grade now. I can't imagine her coming to me and having that conversation.
Well, he was actually old enough that I couldn't really stop him. He was 16, so...
And so what did Papa Ralph have to say about it? I know he didn't like it.
Ralph couldn't say much because he quit in 8th grade. So
he didn't have much of a leg to stand on.
No, he didn't really have any. But Dale said later that he made a thing at the PTA at the old Acock school.
Yes.
And said he regretted,
I know he said many times that he regretted it. The good thing about that is my dad was full of street smarts and common sense.
Yeah.
I was going to say the fight to get him to school every day, and the fight and the back and forth of the teachers. Mother had a teacher tell her one time, if I read what Dale needs to know to him, he makes straight A's. He'd make 100 to him. But to make him concentrate and read something is like I'd have to have a ball bat because he's too distracted, and so just getting him to school every day was such a fight that I think sometimes
Kay had to start him to school more or less, and his teacher was Miss Leffler, and I think for about a week he went with Kay to her room instead of going to his room, and Miss Leffler said that she give him a good whipping, and he was the best child she had the rest of the year.
They wouldn't think of doing that nowadays.
You couldn't do that back then. But
I got paddlings in school. I remember. Yeah. Now you'll get put in jail for child abuse.
So, but he was never good about going to school. He did not like school.
Want to go to school.
So, did you want him to race cars? How did you feel about that?
Well, of course, I didn't really want him to, but he got
a
ride.
Like he was going to do it. Come hell or high water.
Well, he was old enough. I really couldn't say. I didn't have any charge anymore.
Did he still live with you?
He did live with you. He was 16.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Well, he got married when he was 16, 17.
17.
Yeah. See, nowadays in my house we say, well, you got to live under my rules till you're 18, right?
Yeah, right.
Back in the day, then there were so many preconceived notions of what you were supposed to do about getting a job and raising a family. The woman's supposed to clean the house. The man's supposed to have a job. That Dale kind of broke that mold when he wanted to race, because even though Daddy raced and raised us, Mother knew how hard it was. So he broke that mold.
Well, I'll tell you one story. I'm going to tell what I think about it. One night at Metrolina Speedway, Ralph was running in the Super Sport. Kathy's husband, David Oliver, and Dale both were running in the semi-modified or something like that. And Kathy was driving the ladies' race, all in the same night. I had a husband, a son, a daughter, and a son-in-law all racing the same night. And I didn't have any nerve pills or nothing to take. But that was not a good night.
Well, you're still here to tell about it. So
but Kathy won every one she ever entered.
I know. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
I think Daddy won that night, too, and Dale may have.
Yeah. I wanted to know, did Papa Ralph and Dad ever race against each other?
Yeah.
Yep. So how'd that go?
I think they've
More than once did they race, or
just
maybe
that one time. I think it's
just
the
once?
only time.
It was one of the deals, and I think it was actually Metrolina that they didn't have enough cars to field,
And they let them run
and
together.
so they put the semi-modified cars
Gotcha.
in with the late model sportsman cars. And Daddy actually pushed Dale past one of the competitors, during the race. Daddy got behind Dale and pushed him. So, of course, there was a fight afterwards saying Daddy, helped Dale get that position. And he finished in front of that car because the man couldn't get back by Dale. But that was the only time that they were on the track practicing a lot together. So there's some pictures of them on the racetrack together. But that's the only time I remember them racing.
Actually racing together.
Time I was thinking.
So, Kathy, one of the hardest parts of losing my dad for me have been the thoughts that I have about the relationship that I know my dad would have with my kids and with the rest of the grandkids in our family if he were still here. When you lost your dad, because you were relatively young, in your mid-20s,
same age.
You had 2 children of your own. Did you have kind of those same thoughts? And
at the time, you don't think about it, but in hindsight, I think about you have a relationship with your parents as a baby and as a toddler and as a preteen, as a teenager, then as a young adult, but then you have them in a relationship as an adult, and then of course as a senior adult. Well, it's the same thing with your children, because I can remember seeing Daddy hold up the kids and help them walk, and
by the shirt tail.
By the shirt tail, and teaching them to walk. And, I think one of my fondest memories, the loss is tremendous, because they did miss out on that grandparent and that time and that learning and that knowledge that a grandparent brings them. But one of the most special times, I think it was at Christmas, and you may remember it. It was a race that Daddy won by default. He ran second, and they disqualified the car in front of him. It was over at Charlotte. It was ran on a Saturday. It'd be what I guess Grand National, anyway,
or whatever.
And it was on one of those CBS Wild Water Sports or something. And Chris Economaki, after they disqualified the first place car, they came and interviewed Daddy. And Chris Economaki interviewed him. Well, one year at Christmas, Dale has us all come in the living room and sit down. Of course, it's a VCR, puts it in Mama's VCR. And I remember the feeling of emotion that was the first time that a lot of you had seen Daddy, mm-hmm. or heard his voice, mm-hmm. and how special and wonderful it is that you all have all this video and all these recordings and all these memories that, even though they're not personal and you can't hug him, you have them.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, is probably one of my most cherished moments with your dad or my brother, is the fact that it meant enough to him to come bring that and share it with us as a family.
Yeah.
And that half of y'all never, but it also reminded me how country Daddy was.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I've seen just a couple really short video clips
mm-hmm.
of Papa Ralph, and that, to me, I was only a year old when he mm-hmm. passed away in September of '73, and it was really hard to feel like I knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Just growing up and, when you were 10 or 15 or whatever it is, until really I seen those videos and I could feel his character and feel his personality come out in the real versus stories that Mama had told, or seeing pictures or whatever, or hearing stories of you guys and Dad talking about what kind of parent he was and standing in the hallway waiting on you when you come home and things like that.
And I remember seeing him hold you up by the shirt tail, and you walking too.
Yeah.
And your personalities, I can, what little I'm around Dale Jr., but Carrie and you, I can see my daddy in y'all.
Yeah.
And as much as your daddy, but your daddy is so much like Daddy that it's...
But I tell you, Carrie Dale looks like a spitting image of Dale.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Except he's got his mama's brown eyes.
But yeah, losing Daddy so young, and for my kids and all of our kids in the family not to be able to know him was a huge loss.
Yeah. That just comes to mind for me just so often. So Papa Ralph was the racer, but Mama, you have your own lead foot. I'm thinking that so Papa was a racer, and maybe it started with the Earnhardts, but your Coleman genes added in there maybe made Dad and Aunt Kathy as an undefeated powder puffer, and the ones after us really made the gene pool.
See, I tried it one time.
Yeah.
But I didn't do too good.
Did you just get to do like a wife's race or something?
Well, see, Ralph let me drive his car. Yeah,
before the main event.
Well,
before the main event.
He had two cars, and Bud Almond drove the other one, and so they let me and Desi drive, Bud's wife, and we both wrecked. So they had to take two cars and make Ralph one to drive in the main event.
Oh gosh!
And there's a picture of all the ladies that drove in that race, and you could see Mama, because her nose is so red, and it just glows in that picture.
Well, I bumped my nose on the steering wheel when I hit the bank.
Daddy walks up to the car, Mama said, and he looks around the car and up underneath it, and then sticks his head in and says, "Are you all right?"
Had to check on his car first.
Yeah,
he knew he needed that in the next
That's
race.
right.
So we're going to get to talk about Kathy and her racing. You raced when you were younger. You're still undefeated. 10 race series in the Powder Puff, right?
10 for 10.
10 for 10.
I thought it was more than that.
10.
So tell me about that, and talk a little bit about how, which you hit on a little earlier, but how people viewed women driving race cars and that kind of thing in that time. Was that the 60s or 70s? Late 60s?
It was very late 60s. Yeah, it was before. I'm trying to remember, my last race was probably 70. Yeah. Daddy died in 73. I raced maybe one more time after that. Yeah. So it was just, you had some ladies that raced in some obscure series off at some local track.
Hodgkins.
Well, but you didn't have women like they are now. I'm so proud of the women that are coming through, and I'm very excited about Carson. She's so fearless. Oh my God. I just love it. She and Kennedy both. But obviously when I did it, as I said earlier, there's preconceived notions about what people are supposed to do, what women are supposed to do, and in my daddy's world, I was not supposed to race. And so I was actually married the first time I raced, or when I started, was married to David, and raced on dirt. I mean, had no problem finding somebody that'd say, yeah, you can drive my car, never crashed one. But the competition was somewhat limited, 4 or 5 that maybe could kind of race, but the rest of them would wreck just out there by themselves, so it wasn't really a big deal. But one of the last 2 stories, one was my first time on asphalt at Hickory, and Dale took me up there, and a guy by the name of Pat, his little blue Mustang 17, Dale, we went up there on Saturday afternoon, and Dale had Pat get in the car with me and said, okay, now you take her let her drive a couple laps and show her, and after a lap or 2, Dale's out there flagging, telling him, get out of that car before she hurts you, But my last race was at Concord, and it was a big deal. Dale came and practiced, we practiced, and Neil Bonnet actually, Warner Hodgkins' wife, Sharon, drove Neil Bonnet's car. Well, they drove in down there with the Wood Brothers race team and the big rig, and unloaded her car, and all these crew members, and and I'm over here in this little rinky-dink. Anyway.
She was trying to find some crew members to help.
I said, where's all my crew members was Terry Earnhardt, the girls, my family. But it rained it out that weekend. It was in conjunction with Charlotte October race. It rained it out that weekend, so we didn't get to race. And so it was the next weekend. And I don't know, it was 25 laps. It was crazy running heats. I started way back in the back. Sharon had been to North Wilkesboro practicing. I mean, she was really good. She wore her diamond fly brooch on her uniform. And Sunbelt Video follows her around making family videos and pictures. And it was quite an experience, but we raced, we started the main event, she led every lap, and just all of a sudden I saw a break, and I got around her on the last lap, and didn't realize it was the last lap because I saw a hole and I was going for it, so I wasn't paying attention to the flag. So I won by leading on the last lap.
Oh, my gosh.
Was it. And I
Awesome.
said, and she spun out and broke her foot. Warner wouldn't let her drive anymore. But
so that was
it was quite exciting, my race, and I was always excited for you because I think you would have made a great race car driver.
I know. We talk about the times just being different for that, too, and going to college and
Uh-huh.
working and just kind of working. And now, knowing what you know, that I think it all went the way it was supposed to go, right?
I agree.
God's got a plan for us, and
Well,
I think we're following it.
And I think you were able to do it, so you had a knowledge of what it takes,
Yeah.
how it feels, and you got to experience, so you didn't really ever.
Well, it was a
what,
different
jealous
time
of it.
period, too.
It was so
you
different.
know.
Yeah. So, Mama, as Dad got popular and won championships and that kind of thing, what's one of your fond memories of sharing in that with him?
Well, let's see.
He was really proud of his mom. When you, like at those events, you know, you're always pictures with you guys or hugging up, you know, grabbing you and hugging up on Mom.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, the parts I didn't like about it was him having to kiss the beauty queens.
Why'd that bother you?
I didn't like it.
Am I going to have that problem with Wyatt?
I never will forget.
Are you talking about Dale or Daddy?
Ralph.
Oh, Ralph. Oh, I was asking
Ralph.
you about that.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I wouldn't like that either if
No.
my husband was kissing the beauty queens.
I never will forget at Concord one track that he had kissed the beauty queen, and then he started to kiss me, and I turned my head, and the flagman said, "What's wrong, Miss Earnhardt?" I said, "I don't like secondhand stuff."
I actually just thought about that yesterday because I came across a picture of Dad with like one of those Unical girls reaching on his cheek, and I thought how that doesn't happen today. You know, the Sprint Cup girls, they're not kissing on the drivers, and I don't know when that practice stopped, but
I don't
In
either.
fact, isn't there a trophy that says something about Loverboy Earnhardt because it was some
Yeah,
comment made
Dale
about him?
Jr.'s got all the trophies.
Yeah, and it says one of the track promoters
Put
called on
that
to
on
that,
there.
and so he put it on the plaque on the trophy. Ralph
Loverboy
Earnhardt.
oh goodness.
But she was asking about your memories with Dale.
Yeah,
and the
with
special
Dad.
times.
I'm sorry.
With Dad. That's okay. So just as Dad gained in popularity and won championships and stuff, there's a lot of things that we got to do together. Go to banquets and Dale Earnhardt Day. Like, is there something that stands out for you as a great memory?
I guess his first championship really is one of
1980.
my. Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
One of my, the main one, I guess, because when he won his first championship.
Back then, did you travel around to the races? And
I
watch
did
it?
go to most of them.
Yeah.
Well, especially when Dolly and Cal, you know,
Yep.
I traveled with them every race that one year. And
Danny and Sherry took you to a lot of races.
Danny and Cherry, we went. But I haven't got to go see Dale Jr. race as much as I wanted to, but
Yeah, it's so different now to go and get around. It's just different.
it is a lot different.
I know that first time she went to New York and brought back all of us a wine glass from the Waldorf with a napkin.
Stuck in it.
The maitre d' or someone had helped her, and so it's like we were all there with her.
All right, so we have 4 males in the family that can carry on the Earnhardt name. We've got Bobby and Jeffrey, which are Carrie's kids, Danny Jr., which is Uncle Danny's son, and Dale Jr. I think Carrie's done having kids, or I would include him, but I think him and Renee are done. So I'm just going to count those 4 to carry the surname forward. As time marches on, you know, what do you want left as the Earnhardt legacy as it's carried through from generation to generation?
Well, I would hope that there would be an Earnhardt still racing as long as I live, and I don't know that that'll happen, but I'd like to see that. I hate the thoughts of an Earnhardt not being on the racetrack.
So you always want one there to carry on the name from generation to generation. No pressure, boys.
But
What if it's a girl?
We got to remember
Well,
She's got the
Carson.
Earnhardt blood,
Well,
but she's
it
not
could-
got the Earnhardt last name.
I guess
Carson's part of that.
You could have Carson Earnhardt,
Kennedy.
you know, Elledge.
Yeah, no offense to all the girls in the family, but we are overran with girls in our family.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
How many grandchildren and great-grandchildren do you have?
I have 11 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren.
Yes.
And soon to be a great.
Soon to be
Yeah.
17. Oh, great.
Great,
That's
great,
right. That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
With
in
Christy.
October.
that'll be 5
First great
generations in my family.
Yeah, that's going to be incredible. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, I got to have a picture of that.
Yeah,
I hope
good
I
stuff.
live to see it all.
Well, you're doing pretty good. I think you're in pretty good shape. You're spry. What are you, 83?
Yep,
83?
I'll be 84 in July.
So you were 20 when you had Dad. He would have been 63. And
She had Kay
Well, I already
at
had-
17.
I know.
Then 14 months later, had
Kathy,
me.
and
Then
Dale was
16
months later.
And then Randy was
20
20
months. 20 months later. And then 3 years between him and Danny.
But you lost a child between.
Oh, yeah, I had a miscarriage between.
It was just the day and time back then to have them young.
Well, I found out what was causing it.
You did? Did you put a stop to it?
No.
Well, good stuff. Was there anything else you want to talk about? Any other stories or
I can't
questions?
think of anything, really.
Kathy, you think of anything?
No, just that I know how proud your daddy would be of you and
Yeah.
Dale.
Yeah.
Don't make us cry on here now. Can't shed tears.
Nah.
Happy talk.
Happy
it's easy
talk.
to do. If I get to
Happy.
yeah, I get to start looking at Mamaw and I get the tears coming up, then I just have to look away.
Yeah.
Well, it's great
I tell you,
memories.
it's the hardest thing you ever have to do to lose a child.
Yeah,
I hope you never have to do it.
I hope I never. I was thinking of that as I was posing your questions to think of you losing Papa Ralph and then Dad and then Randy. So,
Well, it's different losing a husband than it is. A child's like losing part of yourself.
And she sure has been tough getting us through it, hasn't she?
see, here goes the tears. Yeah, you're the one tough customer. I put a picture up of Dad for his birthday on Twitter, and it was me and Dale when we did a photo shoot with Dad way back in the day,
I
dressed in
loved
kind
it.
of the rough cowboy,
Yeah.
Wrangler looking stuff, and one
Yeah.
tough customer. You're the one tough customer of the family for sure. Well, I appreciate you both being with me today, and glad we got to share some stories, and I hope we can do it again.
I'd love to.
Appreciate you being on here, Kathy, too. And
Anytime.
keeping Mamaw straight.
Yeah, I need somebody to, keep my time, dates, and stuff like that straight.
You do pretty good. We asked you to be here at 12:30. Let's see, we said we were going to do this
You
at
said it
2. Said to leave your house at 12:30, and you were here at 12:30. So I think you got it pretty down pat.
Yeah. Well, I was tired sitting home by myself.
I hear you.
I decided to come up here.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Fastlane Family, and I hope you'll come back and join us next week.
Thanks for listening to Dirty Mo Radio.